Eva Nichols here. Welcome back. Let's complete this little exercise in painting miniatures in watercolor.
Alrighty, the three little miniature paintings that I started are now dry. I rubbed the salt off these three paintings. I threw a little salt on all of them, and you can see this one here. So now I got a little bit of salt action, not that much, above these rocks that I scraped out. And so my next step is going to be that I'm going to lift out a little bit of a moon in this dark area. So I have this gadget that I bought at one of the office supply stores with a bunch of different sizes of circles, and that works perfect as a template. And so now I just got to figure out how big of a moon do I want. I like to exaggerate it a little bit. We've had all these super moons this year, so let's make it a super moon. So I think I'm going to use this one, and I want to do it in this dark area that's a little boring anyway. And so that's a good spot for a moon. It's not too far out on the edge. It's not in the middle. You want to avoid that. Still, even on these little ones, we've got to think a little bit about composition and design. So always make sure that you avoid the middle in your paintings. Makes it easier and makes it more pleasing painting. So I think this was the one, and this is the spot. And I got a little piece of Mr. Clean. I'm going to make him damp, and I'm going to pre-warn you. You might hear a little yelling in the background. My daughter and son-in-law, they're watching the Packers play, and they're Packer fans. So there might be some yelling if something exciting happens. So I closed the door, but they shout. They are loud rulers. That's okay. Okay. Just a little bit, and then right away grab a tissue, and I think we have a moon. Let's see. Yeah, we have a moon. So that's perfect. Now that's got to dry. And then in the meantime, let's work on these two here with the aspens. I already mixed myself a dark color from my French ultramarine blue and my burnt sienna, and so I mixed it over here, so I have a really rich dark, almost black color. And it needs to be lots of pigment and not too much water, and not too much water in my brush. So I'm gonna press the bottom of the hairs by the ferrule against the tissue here. Do a little bit like that, and then I'm going to test it out. I'm going to test down here. So what I want to do is I want to put some of these dark markings on my aspen tree. I think I took out a little bit too much of the paint, and so just get some of those in there, up here. Can you see how that one looks a lot more like an aspen tree now? Let me lift it up so you can see. There. Need to fix it a little bit down here. There. Just a couple of places will do, and I want to kind of take advantage of this little white spot I had there. And do the same on the other trunks. There. And so I'm holding my brush this way, and I'm actually using the side, the back end of my brush, and just barely touching the paper and dragging it across to get those markings. It can take a little practice to get the pressure on the brush just right. There. There's that. I think that's good enough, maybe. So I'm just looking at it, just enough so that it'll define those trunks a little bit better. And I can do the same color over here, because this is my standard. Sometimes, I use wild colors, but since I already have a little of the colors from the background in these trunks, I'm already I've already given them a little bit of a personality. And you know, I call them aspens because I live up here in the high Sierra Mountains in California, not too far from the Nevada border. I teach a lot of classes in Reno, so I can say hi to my Reno students. Hi guys, if any of you are watching. You're not getting enough of me in class. So just fine tuning here. And a little bit on this skinny one too. A little bit on this one. I think that's enough. Yeah. All right. So then I'm going to take my rigger brush and I'm going to roll that in the pigment. So I load it up and then I'm going to get some of the pigment off and dab it a little bit maybe. Make sure I have a nice point on it. And then I'm going to hold it upright and then catch a couple of these areas where I have a dark marking, preferably. Because that's, you know, usually where the branches are coming out, they have those dark markings where the branches are. Continue this one up here. And so I'm just going to run some branches across here, wiggle a little bit. You know, don't make them too regular. That's the hardest part when you're painting, is variety. Always think variety. And so I'm just getting some nice branches, little twigs, whether it's aspen trees or it's birch trees, they have fairly slender trunks. Just give it a little bit more marking here. And then skinny little twigs that look dark. You see? When you look at them. I have an example of actually both aspens, and I have a birch tree in my front yard that I'm looking out on. If you've seen any of my other videos, you might have seen I had one about my studio, and I have my beautiful birch tree right outside my window, and now that it's winter, I have bird feeders on it. I love birding and birds, so I'm sure there'll be some bird paintings in your future. I already did one actually that I posted with a bird that I don't see here, the beautiful red cardinal. Seems like we have more bluebirds here. Blue as in Stellar's jays, we have those. They're a rambunctious bunch. And in the spring and summer, we have two kinds of bluebirds. We have the western bluebird and we have the mountain bluebird. They're both beautiful. All right, so then I got some side branches on this one. Rinse out my brush. And then I'm going to use a little cheater tool. Okay, so I'm going to use, for ease, I'm just going to use my Signo Uniball white pen. That's to get a little bit of some white showing on some of the branches. I like to use that one. So I'm just going to give some little white sparkle here and there, especially over the darker areas. That's what I usually do. You know, I don't want to bother masking out little tiny branches like that. Not for these little paintings anyway. So there we have it, a little bit of that. And there is one painting. of aspen trees, and we'll do a little bit of the same over here. And then I'm going to call that good. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on these little ones. These are supposed to be just little fun ones. And quite honestly, on little tiny paintings, you don't need a lot of detail. I'm just seeing. I say that and then I go in and fiddle with it. That's so typical, isn't it? So I just felt that I didn't have quite enough dark markings on this one here. There. There. I think that's better. I like it better now. Okay, so those two are done. And then we just have our little painting here where I lifted out the moon. And I could put, but I'm not going to. I could put, the shore behind it. But this is like a, it's in the mountains where you're not looking over the lake. I don't have to have every single one looking over the lake. And I'm going to grab my dagger brush. And I have some concentrated French ultramarine here. And I'm going to get a little bit of my Antwerp blue and put it in. My ultramarine blue, French ultramarine blue. And I'm going to just grab my little dagger brush here. And then I'm going to get, well, I could use, for a change, I could use some of my quinacridone gold. I hardly ever use that color. And put that in my blue mix here. And it already got a little greener than I really wanted it. So then I have to go back and get a little bit more of the French ultramarine blue. There. That's more like it. You don't see, when it's moonlight, you don't see like really, really bright colors. It's going to be more bluish and more dark at that time of day or night. So this is more of a night painting. Alright, so I'm going to load up my dagger brush. And let's just put a tree trunk in here. Like this. And I'm just going to dance across, put the branches across the trunk. I always say it's great if you've had too much coffee. This, would be very easy for you. Just kind of wiggle it across and get some evergreen looking shapes. So there's one. I actually still think it looks a little greener than I prefer. So back in the French ultramarine blue. There. Dab, dab, dab. And I can dab in a little bit here. So there's one tree. Looks pretty good, I think. Maybe a little bit out there. Okay, and now comes the important part. We're going to have a couple of trees that goes into the moon. That's going to be our focal area. So I'm doing the same thing here. Dancing a tree across. You can go all the way. Make some darkness down here. And another little one here. Could be even taller. There we go. And those two kind of run together. And I'm going to have a little one here. Just kind of can barely see. And so I'm just dabbing across like that. And I think I need maybe a couple of little distant ones here. So here goes the football fans. Whoops. And just like that, and off the page maybe. Up there into that area. And then so I'm leaving that so that's as if there's some rocks in front on these here, and then I'm going to take my Kleenex and just dab out the color a little bit so that they look more distant. There, and I'm going to call that good. So then I'm going to take the tape off and we're going to reevaluate and let you take a look at the finished little pieces. Okay, I pulled the tape off And here you see there's that little one. I think that turned out great, and the tape really sealed my edges. So what I usually do is I grab one of my little skinny micron pens and then I sign them. I usually write Tahoscape on mine because that's what I call them, Tahoscape, and then I sign them. Eva S. Nichols, that's my signature. So there. So that's ready to either be plopped up on one of those little easels I mentioned earlier, or I usually put them in a little black frame that I buy at the framing store. These little tiny frames that fit 2.5 by 3.5. But here is the two other ones, and as you can see, the paint ran under the tape. And when that happens, I usually have to clean it up, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So if you need to clean up your edges, you need some Mr. Clean, and you need some masking tape and some clean water. So I'm going to take some of the tape and I'm going to put it on. So your painting has to be completely dry for this, obviously. So I put it on so that I can clean up that part of the white edge that needed to be white and not have all that paint. And so I dip Mr. Clean in the clean water, and then I just gently, or not so gently, rub out a little area, and see, right away, it's gone. And this happened to be, I think it was French ultramarine blue and opera rose, which if you saw my video with the how to make a guide for your palette, you can see that opera rose lifts out really easily. So does French ultramarine and cobalt blue. So, you know, that's what that guide is for, that you can pick some colors. If you know that you're going to be painting something where you need to lift out highlights later, don't pick a staining color if you can help it. Now on these little ones, I don't really pay too much attention to that, but for larger paintings, I certainly do. So anyway, that's how I clean up my edges, and you can see now that edge is clean, and that's how I'm going to clean up the rest of that one. And let's just try this other one where I had an orange. I think it was a winter orange or something like that. It's one of the colors that once in a while I play with. If I want to just entertain myself with some new colors, I often use the lid that has these 4 areas, and I squeeze out a little bit of a color from a tube that's, you know, that's not on my palette. Just sometimes it's fun to play around. And let's see, there's an edge that needs some cleanup. And when you use Mr. Clean, I mean, he has to be clean. So I usually just kind of pick off the dirty parts. You can also rinse it out in the water, depending on how staining the colors are. But and then make sure you dab and squeeze it out on your towel here before you go on here, because it holds a lot of water. And once you start scrubbing, then it's going to flow out if you haven't really squeezed it out. And then it might make a bigger mess for you. So you don't want that. And you don't want to scrub with a dirty Mr. Clean, because then you're scrubbing whatever pigment you have on the sponge into your paper, and that was not the intention. So now that edge is clean. That worked pretty well. And I'm going to do one more here, this edge. And I wanted to show you that, you know, sometimes what happens is, especially if it's a really staining color, and I didn't have that much luck, but Mr. Clean still left a little paint behind. Sometimes I go in and I just paint white over it. You can also do that. I try to rinse it out first with Mr. Clean, and then if I need to, I go in and fix it. So here's that other edge, and it's already looking better. And the white that I use is this white here. And I also will use that sometimes for the little white twigs. You know, I showed you how to use the gel pen, but if you have a little bit bigger, fatter twigs where the gel pen doesn't really do it, this white paint is the Aqua Cover. It's by Creative Mark, and its subtitle is Liquid Watercolor Paper. And this particular one I have is designed to cover arches bright white, so it's tinted, so that it's exactly the same white color as my watercolor paper. So you can get it in a couple different, so you want to see what paper are you using. I use bright white, but some use natural white, and you can also get this Aqua Cover for natural white. So whatever, and I don't know if they make it for other brands of paper besides Arches. I'm not quite sure on that. But anyway, so then you could go in, and I think I might have one that I could show you. Let's just use this one as a example. I have a little bit of a blue corner there that could need a little fixing. So there I might grab this little flat brush and just get a little bit of that white paint on. And whenever I use this white paint, I usually put a little drop in one of the areas in my palette. And then, when I rinse it out, it makes my water a little opaque. And I make sure that I don't mix those colors. That dirty water goes out right away. I don't want to rinse out my watercolor brushes in it and then go back in the watercolors and stuff. I'm very picky with that. So see how that's gone now? Because this white paint is very opaque. And the nice thing about it is, might as well do it on this one too. The nice thing about this particular color is, as opposed to like white watercolor or gouache, once it's dry, you can paint over it with watercolor again. So it's also meant, like, you can fix areas in your painting with it if need be. So see here, if I just have like little tiny areas here that needs a little just fixing, then this white paint is just excellent for that. So here we go. So you can see then this is cleaned up, and see here, when I rinse that out, see how milky that got? So I want to make sure that my brush is rinsed out right away, because I certainly don't want that stuff drying in my brush. I think it'll ruin your brushes. And then I will go out and I'll dump this water, and then I'll put fresh water in, and so I don't get any contamination of my watercolors, because I want them to stay transparent. All right, so I cleaned up the edges on these 3 little paintings, and what I wanted to show you is that sometimes when you clean up with Mr. Clean, and if you have to scrub a lot, sometimes it might get a little rough, the paper looking a little rough. And a little trick is, grab a piece of regular copy paper, put it over the area, and grab a little teaspoon, or I have a spoon here, and burnish it like this. And that'll make the paper look nice and smooth again. So voila. This one also looks a little rough. I don't do this very often, only if it's really roughed up. But it really does the trick. That is a trick I learned from another artist, Nancy Collins. She showed me how to do that. So now I'm looking at them. I really like this one. I think that turned out really, really great. So this is a winner. Out it goes. And these 2 here, I mean, I like them, but for my particular taste, they're a little dull. So let's see if we can doctor them up a little bit. So I'm going to grab one of my micron pens. And the first thing I do, if I think a painting of these little ones kind of needs a little help, I try to give it a little bit of an outline, and it's supposed to be, you know, hand drawn, so I don't use a ruler or anything. This is not for precision, this is just, you know, it's kind of rustic. And so there, that already did it a little bit of a favor, I feel. And I could also go in and do a little calligraphy work here, so I could do a little pen work. I don't outline every single little trunk and branch, but a little bit of pen work goes a long way, especially since for my taste this background is a little on the dull side. So this is perfect for those that think I paint way too bright, with too bright colors. So here, by just putting a little bit of pen work in here and there, I feel that that really brings out the painting in a good way. A little bit up here, a little bit here. And I can even go in maybe and do a little bit of pen work like this way. Why not? It's my painting, and you know, the worst thing that can happen is it doesn't turn out. Well, you only have invested, you know, 5-10 minutes and a little tiny piece of paper, and sometimes it can be really healthy to just toss it. But I don't think this one is at that stage. I think this is totally usable. Once it gets a little frame on, I think this will be cute. So let's just write Tahoscape on this one and sign it. And call it a painting. See? There you have it. So that's done. And then let's do the same. I think this one kind of needs the same thing. Give it a little bit of an edge, border. Sometimes this is enough also if you just have a little bit of unevenness, a little bit of creepage. Sometimes that can actually look nice, other times not so much. And then the same thing. Let's get some of these branches. See, if I put a little bit of black around some of those white gel pen marks I made, that kind of will help that along a little bit. Maybe a little bit more pen work. And again, make sure, vary your lines. Don't have it all the same. That gets boring. So here you go. Maybe a little line up here. Some little black lines in here in the trunk. That could be nice. Let's outline this one. And just repeat it a couple of places. That's all you need. There. All right, I think this one's much better now. I like it better. And since it's my painting, that's what counts, right? Okay, there we have it. And now this one's more fun, I think. So here I just lined up a few of the little paintings that I've done this afternoon. These three are the ones I showed you on camera, and then here are some other ones that I've done. So go have some fun with that, and shoot me an email or send me a picture of your creations. That would be fun. See you soon. Happy painting.